A full bus carrying a group of NYSC members who had just completed their 1 year service in a remote village was involved in a horrific accident on their journey home, all because of one terrible mistake. A mistake that brought sorrow and tears to many families. A mistake that could have been avoided. A mistake fueled by greed. In a quiet village, a group of core members lived and worked at the community school. The young people were energetic, always joking and befriending the locals. But as their service year progressed, their curiosity grew. One bright afternoon, while walking through the village's dusty paths, they passed by the chief's compound. The towering gates and intricate carvings filled them with wonder. But something captured their attention, a ceremonial crown displayed within the compound. Its brilliance was mesmerizing, shining like captured sunlight. "That's pure gold," whispered Chidi, the most ambitious of the group, his eyes gleaming with desire. "Do you realize what that could fetch in Lagos?" Another core member, Blessing, shook her head firmly. "Don't even consider it. I've heard the elders speak about this place. That crown is protected by ancient powers. Anyone who takes it never lives to enjoy it." But Chidi laughed dismissively. "Powers, spirits, those are just tales to frighten children. That crown is our path to fortune." Some were tempted by his words, but others felt uneasy. "We shouldn't interfere," Blessing urged. "This community respects their heritage. Let's not invite disaster." But Chidi had already decided, "If you're too afraid, fine, but I'm claiming it, and when I'm wealthy, don't come begging." The days passed quickly, and their departure date approached. On their final night, while everyone prepared to leave, Chidi executed his plan. Under cover of darkness, when stars hid behind clouds and the village slept peacefully, he slipped into the compound with two accomplices who couldn't resist the promise of easy money. The crown sat there, gleaming like treasure from a fairy tale. "It's even more magnificent up close," one whispered, his hands shaking. "Hurry," Chidi hissed, grabbing the crown and hiding it in a dark bag. "Let's go." When they returned, Blessing saw the bag in Chidi's grip. "You didn't," she gasped. "We did," Chidi smirked proudly, "and I'm keeping it." "You're making a grave mistake," Blessing warned, fear filling her eyes. "You don't understand what you've done." But Chidi shrugged carelessly. The only mistake would be leaving it behind. The next morning, the core members boarded their chartered bus. The sky was clear, and villagers waved farewell warmly. Blessing and several others prayed for safe travels at the journey's start, but Chidi and his friends ignored them, laughing and mocking Blessing, calling her Sister Worry. Chidi sat in back, the bag tucked beneath his seat, a satisfied grin on his face. He could already envision the fortune waiting for him in the city. But as the bus rumbled down the dirt road, the crown's golden glow remained concealed, a silent witness to the greed that had set their fate in motion. The bus traveled along the rough road, carrying the core members away from the village. The morning sun blazed overhead, casting long shadows across the red earth. Laughter and conversation filled the air as they reminisced about their time serving. Chidi sat quietly in back, gripping his bag tightly beneath his seat. The crown inside seemed to pulse with strange energy, though only Chidi sensed it. Suddenly, the bus lurched. It stopped abruptly with a loud mechanical groan. The engine sputtered and died. "What's wrong?" someone called out, leaning toward the window. "Engine trouble," the driver muttered, climbing down to investigate. Sweat poured down his face as he examined the vehicle. Hours crawled by under the scorching sun while the driver worked, grumbling and cursing. Finally, the engine roared back to life. The relieved corps members cheered as they continued. But soon after, a loud explosion shattered their relief. "Tire burst," the driver announced, his expression twisted with frustration. He hurried to replace it, muttering prayers. The corps members grew restless, fanning themselves as heat bore down mercilessly. Still, no one noticed Chidi's bag or the hidden crown inside its silent presence, casting an invisible shadow over them all. With the tire replaced, they resumed their journey, but as miles passed, an uncomfortable silence descended. The wind that had felt warm now carried a chill. Chidi glanced around nervously but remained quiet. Then, without warning, the brakes failed. The driver's panicked shouts filled the air as he fought to control the accelerating bus. "Hold tight!" he yelled, but his voice was drowned by screaming. The bus swerved violently before plunging into a deep ravine. The crash was deafening. Dust and debris clouded everything, mixed with cries of agony. When the chaos settled, 3 corps members lay dead, their dreams and laughter extinguished like candles in wind. Others moaned, bodies bruised and broken. Rescuers arrived quickly, pulling the injured from the wreckage, but as they counted survivors, 1 person was missing. Chidi. "Maybe he was thrown from the bus," someone suggested, voice trembling. "Or burned in the flames," another whispered, shuddering. But Chidi wasn't dead. He had escaped from the crash, clutching his bag tightly to his chest. His legs carried him far from the wreckage, his heart pounding with fear and guilt. The golden crown, still hidden in his bag, seemed heavier than ever, as if it knew the blood spilled because of it. And as Chidi fled, the shadow of his greed followed, waiting to strike again. Chidi hurried away from the wreckage, his legs moving like the wind as he fled the disaster. After hours of walking, he finally found another bus heading to his city. Relief washed over him as he boarded, clutching his bag tightly. The new bus rolled smoothly at first. Chidi leaned back, thinking of the money he'd make selling the golden crown, but soon the bus began shaking violently. "Driver, what's happening?" a passenger shouted. The driver slammed the brakes, but the bus wouldn't stop. It veered sideways before jerking to a halt. Passengers tumbled forward, shouting in fear. "It's the brakes," the driver muttered, shaking his head. "They've failed." Passengers groaned, climbing out while the driver inspected the damage. Chidi stayed silent, his heart racing. He knew something was wrong, but he refused to release the crown. After hours of delay, Chidi finally reached home, his bag heavier than ever. As Chidi stepped into the house, his youngest brother Emeka ran to greet him. "Brother Chidi," Emeka shouted, his laughter like music. Chidi forced a smile and patted Emeka's head. "Go play, Emeka," he said quickly, heading to his room to hide the crown. But misfortune had already crept into the house, like a thief in the night. That evening, as Emeka bathed, he slipped on the wet floor, his head struck a wooden shelf, and he fell silent. By the time the family found him, it was too late. Emeka was gone. The house filled with wails of sorrow. Chidi sat quietly in a corner, his face pale, hands trembling. He clutched his knees as guilt gnawed at his heart. As night deepened, strange cries began echoing through the house. Not cries of mourning, but something darker. Ghostly whispers floated through the air, chilling the family to their bones. The wind howled like a wild beast, and the air grew heavy with dread. "What is happening?" Chidi's mother whispered, clutching her wrapper tightly. Then the next blow struck. Chidi's father, strong and proud like an ancient tree, suddenly fell ill. His body stiffened, and he could no longer move. "It's a stroke," called the diviner. Chidi's mother cried, her voice shaking. The diviner arrived swiftly, his face grim as he examined the father. He spoke in a low, steady voice. "Someone has taken what doesn't belong to them. Until it's returned, this family will know no peace." The family stared at one another, confused and terrified. Chidi sat frozen, his heart pounding like a drum. "Who took it?" the diviner demanded, his eyes scanning each family member. "I didn't take anything," Chidi lied, his voice barely a whisper. The diviner narrowed his eyes, but said nothing more. He left with a warning. If what was stolen isn't returned, this is only the beginning. As the family mourned Emeka and worried over their father, Chidi slipped away to his room. He unwrapped the crown and stared at its golden surface. "It's just a crown," he muttered, voice trembling. "Tomorrow I'll sell it and use the money to fix everything. It'll all be fine." But deep down, Chidi knew the truth. The golden crown was no ordinary treasure, and his greed had unleashed a storm he could no longer control. As the morning sun rose, Chidi's heart was heavy, but his greed remained stronger. He wrapped the golden crown in black cloth and stuffed it into his bag. "Today I'll sell it," he whispered to himself, voice shaky. He stepped out while his family still mourned and made his way to the market. The road was long and dusty, but Chidi pressed on. The bag on his back felt heavier with each step, as though the crown was fighting to return to the village. Then it began. From the corner of his eye, he saw a shadow dart across the road. He froze and turned, but nothing was there. His steps quickened, but the shadows followed. "Chidi," a voice called. He stopped dead. It was faint but familiar. Turning slowly, he saw a figure in the distance. It was Emeka, his little brother. But Emeka's eyes were hollow, his face pale. "Return the crown, brother," the ghostly figure whispered, his voice carrying on the wind. Chidi stumbled backward, heart pounding. He turned and ran, but more ghosts appeared, their faces twisted in sorrow. Some he recognized, others were strangers. As he reached the market, Chidi thought he was safe. But suddenly, out of nowhere, masquerades burst into sight. Their tall, colorful figures loomed over him, their whips cracking through the air. "Thief!" they shouted. "Return what you stole!" The first whip struck his back, and Chidi screamed. Another lash, and he fell to his knees. He begged, but the masquerades showed no mercy. "Please," he cried, "I'll return it." But no one else could see the masquerades. To the townspeople, Chidi was thrashing on the ground, screaming at invisible enemies. "Is he mad?" someone whispered. Chidi's voice rose above the market noise. "I stole the chief's crown," he shouted, tears streaming down his face. "I stole it." The crowd gasped. Whispers turned to murmurs, and murmurs became shouts. "He stole from the village chief." Chidi, still being flogged by the unseen masquerades, staggered to the diviner's house. His cries filled the air as the masquerades followed, their whips cracking like thunder. Chidi burst into the diviner's house, falling to the floor. The room smelled of herbs and smoke, but to Chidi it felt like sanctuary. "Help me!" he cried, clutching his bag tightly. "The masquerades won't stop. They're flogging me." The diviner, calm and stern, watched with sharp eyes. "What did you do, boy?" Chidi trembled, voice barely above a whisper. "I took the chief's crown. It's here, in my bag. The diviner shook his head, voice low and grave. Do you know what you've done? That crown is tied to the spirits of the village. You've brought a curse upon yourself and your family. Chidi fell to his knees. Please, I'll return it. Just make them stop. The diviner reached for his tools and began a ritual. He muttered chants, waved leaves, and sprinkled powder over Chidi. For a moment, the air grew still, and the masquerades disappeared. You have 3 days, the diviner said seriously. Return the crown to the chief, or the curse will consume you and your family. This is your only chance. Chidi nodded, clutching his bag. But as he stepped outside, the masquerades reappeared. They cracked their whips, and Chidi screamed in pain. No drivers would stop for him. They thought he was insane. With no choice, Chidi began walking back to the village, step by painful step. The masquerades flogged him, their voices echoing in his ears. Return the crown, they chanted. For 2 long days, Chidi walked. His body was weak, his back raw from the whips of the invisible masquerades. His legs wobbled, but he kept moving. The path to the village seemed endless, and the crown in his bag felt like it weighed more than the world. As Chidi approached the village gates, the air grew heavier. The masquerades, still following, cracked their whips one last time and disappeared into thin air. Chidi stumbled into the village, his clothes torn, his face streaked with tears and sweat. The villagers were waiting. The chief stood at the compound gates, surrounded by his elders and priests. They had known he would return. They always did. The golden crown had a way of calling its thief home. Chidi dropped to his knees, body trembling. He unwrapped the crown and placed it before the chief. "Forgive me, your majesty," he sobbed. "I was blinded by greed. I thought I could escape, but I've paid dearly for my foolishness." The chief looked at Chidi, his face calm but stern. "You have brought great sorrow upon yourself and your family. The spirits do not forgive easily. You have returned the crown, but the price you've paid is heavy." Chidi's heart sank as he remembered his youngest brother and his father. Tears streamed down his face as he bowed his head in shame. The villagers murmured among themselves. Some were angry, others pitied Chidi, but the chief raised his hand, silencing them. "He has returned what belongs to us. His greed has already punished him more than we ever could." Just as Chidi prepared to leave, a messenger arrived, panting and wide-eyed. "Your father has passed," the man said. "He died this morning." Chidi's knees buckled, and he collapsed to the ground. His grief was like a storm crashing down with no mercy. The villagers lowered their heads, for even they felt the weight of his loss. Chidi left the compound, his heart heavy with sorrow. Each step away from the village felt like a stone being added to the burden he carried. He thought of Emeka's laughter, now silenced forever. He thought of his father, strong and proud, now gone because of his foolishness. "I cannot go home," Chidi whispered to himself. "What home is there for me now?" He wandered aimlessly until he reached a large river near the village. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Chidi stood at the edge, staring at the rippling surface. His mind raced with memories, the joy he had stolen from his family, the lives lost in the bus crash, the fear he had caused in the village. The crown, now back in its rightful place, had taken everything from him. "I have nothing left," he said, his voice barely audible over the gentle rush of the river. Without hesitation, Chidi stepped into the water. The river embraced him, pulling him deeper and deeper until he disappeared beneath its surface. The ripples faded, and the water returned to its calm, quiet state. When the villagers learned of Chidi's fate, they shook their heads in sorrow. His story spread far and wide, whispered by old women to their grandchildren, told by fathers to their sons. Let this be a lesson, they would say. Greed is a fire that consumes everything. It spares no one, not the thief, not their family, not their future. And so, the tale of Chidi and the stolen crown lived on a warning to all who dared to defy the traditions and spirits of the land.